First, talking about a little bit of an injury report, some of the latest that we've heard from the Oklahoma Sooners, kind of within the doors, and some reports that we've been able to dive into for the Oklahoma Sooners getting closer to season. And I know I said we weren't going to talk about injuries, but we're not dwelling on injuries of the past. That's really what I was referring to. We're going to get into it and dive into it, because as Oklahoma gets closer to the season opener, one of the biggest storylines this entire offseason, and talking about last season and what happened to the Oklahoma Sooners, was really all about the injuries. It's all about the health of the Sooners. And, you take a look and think of what happened last season. I don't need to go through it again. After all the injuries that derailed the Sooners in the 2024 campaign, they contributed a huge part to that 6-7 record that the Oklahoma Sooners finished with last season. And of course, fans are keeping an eye on the roster. They want to know what's happening with the health and how is it improving, if it is improving at all. And the good news for Oklahoma fans, because again, we're not going to dwell on what happened last season anymore. The good news is that this team this year is it's deeper. It's more talented in so many different ways. And overall, it's just healthier heading into the fall and heading out of fall camp right now. We're really wrapping it up here, getting into game week almost. Yeah, I said that. We're almost to game week, 11 days today, I believe it is. So, there's so much about this team that's good news for Oklahoma Sooners fans when we're into fall camp right now. And that's something that Oklahoma fans should want to hear about, and the good news surrounding that. Coach Brent Venables talked about the fall camp and how it's really kind of only come with those normal bumps and bruises, which is a huge improvement from last season. When you think of this time last year, when we were heading closer towards the end of fall camp, there was all kinds of big updates about, well, we hope so-and-so would be ready to go maybe by game 2. And we're not really sure here. There was all kinds of injuries that we had to report on and wonder if players were going to be playing, and they were all key players. There was a bunch of the offensive line, of course, the wide receivers, and that's not the way that it is this year. So that's really what's the best news about it going into this season, regardless of how we want to look at it. It's much better right now, which is good news. Good things. They've made a lot of adjustments. They've made a lot of changes, specifically with their health, with their conditioning, the way that they're working the guys, the way that they've taken precautions. And we'll talk about a lot of those. First, starting off with the star running back Jaden Ott, who did sprain an AC joint in his shoulder earlier in camp. He's been limited, but the staff is really just being very cautious with him. Obviously, with him being that star running back, the guy that they believe could really help boost this team, a guy that they went out into the transfer portal and felt really good about being able to bring in. Jaden Ott is definitely one of those guys that they want to be very careful with, and that's exactly what they're doing with Jaden Ott. So, when you look at Jaden Ott and where he's at right now, he's expected and he's on track to be playing on August 30th against Illinois State. Now, does he need to play against them? Probably not, but it would be nice to get him on the field here and there and, get him some rotations, get him used to the game speed, because it's so much different when you're talking about where he was in the past in Cal and the type of players that he was around there. He's mentioned that, it's not really a cut on his teammates at Cal. It's just the fact that it just wasn't the same atmosphere as what he's at in Oklahoma. And the same's going to go for game day. If he can get his feet wet a little bit, that's really what you would hope for, because you do want him in week 2 whenever Michigan comes to Norman. Talk about backup, one of the backup running backs, Taylor Tatum. He's been healing with hamstring issues throughout fall camp and really hasn't been up to full speed in quite some time now. It's really kind of opened the door, though. So some, I guess, good news, if you want to take good news away from it, is that it's kind of opened the door to the freshman, Tory Blaylock. That's been the biggest one that's really seen and taken advantage of some extra opportunities. And so, he's absolutely gotten more action and taken advantage of every moment that he could, and really been turning heads. Been a lot of people, a lot of media, a lot of coaches talking about Tory Blaylock and excited about what they've seen out of him in fall camp. But as far as Taylor Tatum, really not sure how long the waiting period will be for him to get back in there. I don't think they're too worried about getting him in there, because that running back room is so deep. We've talked about this ad nauseum on this show, is how you've got Jaden Ott, you've still got Javonte Barnes, you've got Xavier Robinson, you've got Taylor Tatum, and whenever he's healthy again, and you've also, which you've also got Torrey Blaylock hiding in there, a guy that is extremely underrated. Who knows who else is there that we just don't know about, like Xavier Robinson last season. So there's all kinds of big good news out of that running back room. And some of the good news right now is that Jaden Ott is still on a good, healthy pace right now to be ready to go by August 30th, whenever that game 1 starts off against Illinois State. But going over to the defensive side of the ball real quick, defensive tackle, this is one that I knew was out there and just hadn't talked about it. And so then it just kind of slipped and I forgot that this was actually something going on. It's Grayson Halton, who strained his hamstring in July and really hasn't practiced, at all in fall camp. But he's expected to be back for the Michigan game on September 6th, kind of being very cautious with him as well. They want him to get to full strength and get him back out on the field. And so he is expected to be back by then. He's on pace for then from the last that I've heard. And so hopefully that's the case with a big-time guy like Grayson Halton, who's really able to help with that big-time depth there on the defensive line, specifically at the defensive tackle. And so big question mark there just because he hasn't really practiced at all in fall. But from reports, he should be just fine as we get closer to time. And then over on the outside, you got PJ Adebawore, who's also kind of missed a few days here and there with hamstring discomfort. And discomfort is the way that they've kind of explained that, although it's not ever been considered serious. It's just something that they're making sure that they tend to. They're making sure that they get it right before the season really starts to kick off. And so really keeping an eye on him. And like I said, nothing being considered serious there at all. And so, again, that's good news compared to what we had a season ago. With Kendall Dolby, of course, we know the injury that he went through last season, going through rehab, getting back. And he's battled multiple injuries, and here in fall, he battled a little bit with a thumb sprain. He had a groin issue that was hurting a little bit and really hasn't practiced since the early days of camp, but his availability is kind of still up in the air. It's open for the opener against Illinois State. It's kind of questionable, but the expectation is that he is going to be back for a bulk of the season when they need him the most in SEC play, all of that. He's on a good track and he's fighting really hard. He wants to be on that field. I know I just talked with him a few weeks ago and talking about how important this season is for him. He wants to be out there. The coaching staff, the medical staff, they all want to be out there, have him out there on the field. And so for sure, he's one of those guys he's going to battle back. He's going to get himself right. The medical staff's going to make sure he's doing just fine. All of that good news. And then, of course, as for Eli Bowen, last updates that I have is that, we kind of heard a little bit that he may not be ready and be back until maybe into a few weeks into the season. So we will kind of touch on him a little bit later on as well. But as far as Eli Bowen, really no set and secure time frame for him yet. That's a guy that I will try to be checking in on, try to see what the news is on him, if there is any news. For now, I will just take no news as crap. What the heck's going on here? But for Oklahoma, they've really had kind of several players in and out of concussion protocol. You've got Jake Taylor, who's already been cleared back with no setbacks at all. Derek Simmons, he's been kind of sidelined since August 2nd, and his recovery's been taking a little bit longer than they expected, just because he's had past concussions that have kind of caused him to be held back just a little bit on that side of things. So Derek Simmons, hoping to be back in and hoping to get him right. It's just they're taking a lot of time with him and making sure that he gets through that concussion protocol safely. That's something very serious. They're wanting to tend it as such. Still, he and Jacob Sexton both kind of expected to be cleared by next week. So as far as game readiness, that should be all good to go, cleared for game week. And really the same goes for Zion Kearney, who's been out since August 8th, just kind of taking it slow. And he's expected to be ready. I believe I even saw him back into practice here this week too. So I didn't double check that. That's just something from my notes that might have been written down yesterday. So I'll check in on that. But I'm pretty sure I might have seen him even practicing as much as this week. So he's been kind of in and out for little bits here and there for concussion protocol. But again, tending to it, getting him right. For Keontez Lewis, the wide receiver transfer, he missed some time with a hamstring, but it's not really a long-term concern at all. And then, of course, tight end Caden Helms also, he's been practicing with the soft cast, which is a good thing on the fractured hand. That's not a good thing, but it was a soft cast, which is a good indication that they don't feel too concerned about it. And, he still remains active in practice every day, remains, I believe, even full speed practice too. So full everything, full practices. So Caden Helms expected to be just fine with that soft cast. What that means is that whatever that fracture is, it's able to be protected by something that still allows him to move and flex his hands. It's going to restrict him a little bit, but not as much. And and for the most part, it's going to really kind of protect him. So he's definitely expected to be okay. Let's see here. Going on, we've got other kind of key contributors, actually not kind of, very much key contributors, others that are kind of a question mark right now as to how key of a contributor they will be, but they will be a contributor of some sort. Robert Spears-Jennings, obviously big time contributor there. And then also Isaiah Satania, Kendall Daniels, the transfer from Oklahoma State, and then of course Jacoby Johnson. All of them kind of held out briefly here for precautionary reasons, but mostly all have been back in since kind of these short breaks that they've taken throughout fall camp. And so there's not really much of an update there other than to mention that they have all kind of had little bits here and there where they take maybe a day off, maybe just a few hours off, whatever the case may be, and they're right back in it. So again, that I'm explaining this to you because there's some good news there for Oklahoma Sooners fans who remember what happened last season. For Giovanni Gibson, he is still recovering from that April leg surgery, and probably won't play in the opener. If we're being totally honest with ourselves as Oklahoma fans, probably not going to be playing there. But there's a chance that he could be back in for Michigan week 2. Oklahoma fans aren't going to hold their breath on that. We know how that happened a season ago. So we're not going to hold our breath, but we're hearing good news. Whether that comes to fruition is what we're really hoping about. Going back to Eli Bowen real quick, because with his injury, that's something that I didn't mention. It was a high ankle sprain that was kind of a setback. That would have been back in July whenever that first happened. And he's definitely out for week 1. He should return early in the season. They're hoping very early in the season. They're hoping for week 2. I just haven't heard anything to really be able to confirm whether they think that he can be back by week 2 or not. They've been taking it very precautious with him because they want him back in. That's a dude. We saw what he was capable of in his freshman year. Of course, that's opened some of the door for guys like Cortland Guillory, who we've talked a lot about here on this season as well. So, it's exciting. I think this is all stuff to look at and to know that we're getting some good news out of everything from last at least compared to last season. Anyways, going on, the last wide receiver to mention is, we've got Jaden Gibson, who continues to recover from that torn patella tendons, and it was something that he suffered from last year, kind of a setback later on in this spring. And, his timetable, his time frame, it all kind of remains unclear. That's something that I haven't been able to see any clear indications. I know when I talked to Parker last, I talked with him, and he mentioned still no really set times on his return, but we're hoping, right? We're hoping that we can get him right, get him back in there. Jaden Gibson's one of those guys too that Oklahoma fans know that he can be special. It's just whether we're going to get him back in there or not is the big things. But of course, right now, expectations for 2025 season should kind of stay low, the reasonable expectations. And, just as many Oklahoma fans would expect, just kind of keeping your expectations for any of these low. But also, like I mentioned in the beginning of all of this, is just from the fact that as an Oklahoma fan, you have to understand that this team is much deeper than they were last year. They are much more talented than they were last year. And so that's the good news that you can take away from all of this. Again, some of the injury reports that you're getting from Oklahoma right now are reports that, hey, we're expecting this guy to be good to go. We're being very cautious with him, like Jaden Ott, for example. And you're not hearing the same kind of injury concerns that you heard from last fall. So all in all, Sooners are much healthier than a year ago. Most key contributors kind of trending in the right direction, especially with that offensive line. And then, of course, with the staff, with them being cautious, this cautious approach, it's because they have short-term memory as well. They know what happened last season, especially there in fall camp. And, it's kind of helping them enter this season with kind of a deeper more of a roster depth and also the continuity that was missing back in 2024. So all good news so far coming from the Sooners there on that front.